All right, you guys. I'm doing another time life video tonight because I want you to start thinking about other things too. So this is going to be gold because I think you need to own gold, and I want to give you a let me see if I can find I just printed it out, but the headline didn't come out, so I just want to read you the headline. But anyway, I want to give you other sources of information on it's always like this, isn't it? All right, so we'll go without. I won't give you the headline. And there might be a little bit of room missing. Well, there is a whole paragraph missing. Let me see if I can find it by scanning out. And this is by Von Greyerz, and he is fantastic. I have followed him for a long time. He's out of Switzerland, so he speaks 5 languages, and all of them are gold. Here it is. Okay, so here's the headline. As dominoes fall, gold will stand even stronger than ever. Okay, so I'm going to read from this because that didn't print out. This was written by Egon Von Greyerz, chairman of his own gold company, Gold Switzerland. And it was written June 17, 2024. At the end of a monetary era, which you would all agree we're in now, a number of dominoes will keep falling, initially gradually, then suddenly, as Hemingway explained when asked how you go bankrupt. Exactly. Some of the important dominoes the world will see falling are political, geopolitical, currency, debt, and investment assets. The consequences will be unthinkable. Social unrest, war, hyperinflation, deflationary implosion of assets, debt defaults, and more. So this is why, this isn't a pitch, but this is why for those of you who have heard me suggest this small offering of a miner that has risk and reward, but it has tremendous upside and leverage to a massive amount of gold potentially. This is why I recommend participating in such investments. If you are interested in it, tune into my lives, or anyway, I'm not pitching that. I just want to re-emphasize that gold is, I think, the first place to start in owning something in the precious metal area. Okay, and then silver is my favorite, but I'm now listening to John Quasson about platinum. Okay, so let me read the rest of this. But when things settle down, in other words, this is exactly what I've been describing to you, that we will go through a panic. It's like a hurricane or an earthquake or, I guess, a fire or a war. There will be a panic, and people in panics behave like cattle in panics or zebras in panics, or, we're, at our core, we are animals. We might even have some lizard in us, our basic brain. So the panic, the purpose of trying to make yourself your own financial island, your own central bank, is to be able to survive that storm, survive that panic. And on the other side of it, you will be in at least a financial position to be independent, strong, and maintain your status that you currently have, or better. Okay, let's continue with Egon. But when things settle down, there will also be offsetting forces such as the emergence of powerful BRIC nations, often backed by commodities. Gold will play a major role during this process. Both central banks, sovereign wealth funds, and investors will turn to gold as the most stable part of a crumbling system. This will lead to a fundamental revaluation of gold. As more gold cannot be produced, increased demand can only be satisfied by higher prices. He's saying, remember, English isn't his first language, but he's saying more gold can't be produced quickly, basically. Enough gold to solve the problem cannot be produced. The likely result will be a revaluation of gold by multiples. Fall of the leadership domino. Inept leaders and the lack of statesmen are the typical prerequisites for these periods. In other words, these periods of, let me go to the first, I can't go to the first page. These periods of financial, monetary distress. And thus lead to falling dominoes. I have always argued that a country gets the leaders it deserves. As we get to the end of one of the worst periods in history, both financially and morally, weak leadership exists in most major Western economies. So let's look at the motley crew of world leaders and their unpopularity. I used up a lot of color on my printer for this. I'll open it up on my computer so I can read it to you as I show you. So you've got whoever that doofus is on the on your left at 70%. You've got Trudeau at 65%, Castro there at 65%. You've got Macron at 65%. Whoever that woman is, 40%. You've got breakfast at Biden's at 59%. I assume that's South Korea, 57%. And I have no idea. Is that India at 72%? I don't know if India is the G7 leader. That might be Japan. That 57% guy might be Japan. The 72% guy might be the prime minister in the UK. That's probably who it is. He's ex-Goldman Sachs, by the way. Okay, so political leaders will not only be thrown out at elections, but also before their period is finished. The recent European election is a typical example of a failed system. Most ruling parties are being rejected, and in many cases, parties on the right are gaining popularity. Just look at the picture, which I just showed you, of the recent G7 meeting in Italy. Oh, that's the woman. She's Italian. With the exception of Italy's Meloni, the remaining G7 leaders have disapproval ratings of 57% to 72%. Disapproval ratings. Only Italy is okay. With elections in the UK and France this year, the ruling parties are guaranteed to lose. The French presidential election is not until 2027, so Macron could be a lame duck for 3 more years. The French people are unlikely to accept that and might force him out by them. Whoever is elected in France, the powerful trade unions are likely to bring the country to halt. UK's Sunak, that's the one. Sunak is one of Britain's most ineffective leaders in history. But the new Labour Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, was not even seen to stand a chance 2 to 3 years ago. He will not be voted in, but Sunak will be voted out by the people. Next will be a very dark period in the UK history, with high taxes, high debt, poor leadership, and political instability and hard times. Do you hear that? That's tough. The US situation today is even worse, with a president who seems incapable of taking any decisions. Instead, the United States is led by an unelected and unaccountable group of neocons who tell the president what to say and what to do. But even that is difficult for Biden to execute. Just his recent appearance in Italy at the G7 meeting confirms that. He can obviously not be blamed for being senile, but he should no longer have the ultimate power. Bravo. The United States election is likely to be a disaster, absolutely. Looking at the poor health of Biden, it is unlikely that he will stand for re-election in November. Who said that first? That you heard. Kamala Harris will clearly not stand for election. It would not be surprising to see Hillary Clinton ushered in as the Democratic candidate. Who told you that first? Who predicted it first? Although Trump is loved by around half the people, he is hated by the other half, and thus he is a very divisive choice. A rerun of the Clinton-Trump election could easily lead to trouble or insurgents in the United States, whoever wins. Germany's Schlotz, I wonder if he was in this picture. Oh, that must be that 70% guy. Yeah, Germany's Schlotz coalition might not make it to the 2025 election due to its unpopularity and the decline of the German economy. In summary, the political stage will be a total mess in the coming years. And the lack of strong leadership will not only bring political unrest, but also social unrest. This is why you've got to be friends with your neighbors. You've got to make sure you're spiritually, physically in shape. You're ready to downsize and live a completely different life for a period of time. And you've got to make sure you own assets that survive what's coming, so you can be independent on the other side. Okay, next section. Fall of the currency and debt dominoes. So he's describing everything as falling dominoes. The currency domino has been falling ever since Nixon closed the window in 1971. the president said the United States would no longer exchange dollars for gold. He said nix on that. That's what Professor Matthews said in our economics class at my old school. Okay, with high spending and deficits on top of debt to GDP above 100%. So with high spending, with high deficits, and debt to GDP ratios above 100% in many nations, the West in particular is facing a very dark period with galloping debt growth and collapsing currencies. You gotta own gold, you gotta own silver, you gotta own gold, oil and gas, you gotta own the things you know about. This will lead to debt defaults, bank defaults, more printing, higher interest rates, and still higher deficits. All currencies will accelerate their debasement process. In such a scenario, there will be no winner. It is possible that the dollar, attributable to demand for it, will be stronger slightly than other Western currencies, at least for a while. But a temporary relative strength of the dollar should be totally ignored. There is no prize for coming in second or third to the bottom. All currencies will lose dramatically in real terms, which means against gold. This is why I wish we had had a run in one of these stocks so we could be more aggressive in the gold, silver, and platinum space. I think water, any real assets, copper, lithium, anything. But anyway, this article's on gold. We must remember that we are now in the final collapse of the current monetary system. Since 1971, all currencies have lost 97 to 99% in real terms. In other words, versus gold. So let me show you this. Let me try to point out a couple. The mark collapsed in 1920, the Reichsmark. The yen collapsed by the end of 1950. I guess that was the Deutschmark. The Reichsmark came down and then just withered away. The pound, the D-mark, I guess there's been a lot of marks. But you see the dollar, it's right down there with it. By the time you get out where we are, they're all down. The final 1 to 3% fall, which is 100% from where we are now, will take place in the next 3 to 8 years. So we have 3 to 8 years to make money with our currency. It goes up, then we go buy the real asset. Gold, silver, platinum, oil and gas, a puppy dog, real things, So yet another currency system will bite the dust. This current currency model lasted since 1913, so it's been a bit over a century. Its demise was predestined the day it was born. It's kind of like each of us. It was only a matter of time. As always in history, the consequences will be much more far-reaching than just the death of money. He gives an interesting picture. You won't see it, but it's an art piece called The Death of Money. I'll see if I can get that snapped so on a live I can put that up. Debt and currency collapses happen hand in hand. They are partners in crime and are the inevitable consequence of sustained government deficit spending. After a period of unlimited currency printing, the financial system will fail partially or totally. Political and social unrest also follows, possibly civil war. Governments under economic pressure normally start a war or escalate an existing one to divert the attention from domestic problems. A war is also a good excuse for printing more money. That's what Gerald Celente says. When all else fails, they take you to war. That's what I've been saying. We're already at war. Okay, now the next thing he talks about is the fall of the asset domino. Initially, there will be high inflation, possibly hyperinflation, and high interest rates. Thereafter, as the system implodes, inflated asset prices in stocks, bonds, property will crash by 50% to 100% in real terms. So, just to fit this in with what I've been suggesting, I think the stock market still has another 30, 40, 50% to go on the upside over the next, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Maybe it could be longer, but I don't think so. But I think certainly through the presidential election and maybe into the beginning of the wars. But then it's over. Then it comes down faster than the slow lifting of a car on one of those roller coasters. Slowly gets to the top, and then there's a moment you're suspended in air, and then it'll come down like that. Most sovereign bonds, if they are printed, will serve as wallpaper. I rate the chances of this chain of events taking place as very high, especially in the West. So I'm continuing to recommend to you to think in terms of being a central bank, getting out of debt. I don't know, the one on the mortgage, I don't know what to think about that. I don't think they'll let you write that off, but we'll see. But own precious metals. Miners, real, maybe ETFs for a trade, but don't expect them to be there when the system collapses. But as you get profits in some of these trades, if you do, and for those of you in NVIDIA, for example, yeah, it could keep going. Sure, it could. But why not take 10% of it and put it in something like gold or silver? Financial, economic, political, and social collapses of this kind are nothing new, as they have happened throughout history, albeit not on a scale of this magnitude. Here's another domino, the fall of the nuclear war domino. What will we have? A nuclear war. We obviously don't need to worry about this option, since if we have a global nuclear war, there will be very few, if any, people left on Earth. Thank you. I'm so glad that people voted for Joe Biden because he was elegant. As the world potentially moves as close to a nuclear war as it can without starting one, we must ask ourselves, who is running the world? Who are you? Who? Well, no one individual, of course, but the U.S. leadership is probably the main contender when it comes to dictating at their whim to any country in the world. This can be starting wars in a country which is no threat to the United States. It can be controlling the global financial system through the dollar or regulating the banking system via edicts like FATCA, requiring the world to report any dollar transaction to U.S. authorities. It can also involve coups in countries which the United States leadership finds unacceptable, or even eliminating enemies. It can be sanctions or freezing assets against countries whose actions the United States leaderships disapprove. Thank you, Victoria Newland. The list is endless. What is interesting is that the United States people never have a say in any of these decisions. All the actions above and many more are taken by the U.S. president and his advisors with zero accountability to the people. None of this would be possible in, for example, Switzerland, where people power rules through direct democracy. What the world should ask itself is, how does it solve the extremely serious situation the world is in? I'm not talking about the Ukrainian war, which, as Trump indicated, could be stopped within a few days if the United States stopped sending weapons and money to the Ukraine. Putin recently made it clear that what Russia wants is to keep the Russian-speaking areas of eastern Ukraine and no NATO membership for Ukraine. But no one is interested in exploring this. Instead, there has just been a peace conference in Switzerland where neither Russia nor China was present. Such a conference is a total waste of time and money. Without two of the mightiest military and economic powers on earth, one of which, Russia, is directly involved in the war, this conference will achieve absolutely nothing. Excuse me. This is just posing for the cameras with a bland, meaningless statement at the end. So instead of these useless conferences, the leaders of China, Russia, and the United States should get together to end the Ukraine war and then tackle the real problems facing the world, like poverty, famine, crime, drugs, debt, etc. Imagine what the combined brain power and resources of these countries could achieve, assisted by many more nations. But sadly, that is a dream which is unlikely to be realized. It is much easier to print money and start a war rather than to find real and sustainable solutions to the major global problems the world is facing. So the world leaders have a choice. Pick up the phone and talk to each other or start a war. What sane leader would choose nuclear war before a small loss of ego and peace? I guess Blinken, Newland. Maybe whoever's running Biden. Okay, so he gets to his point. Wealth preservation for financial survival. So what can investors do to protect themselves? Here's some don'ts. Do not keep most of your wealth in a fragile banking system, whether in cash or securities. When many banks are likely to default, it might take too long before your assets are released, if ever. Bail-ins or forced investments are likely in government securities at low interest rates and for extended periods, like 10 years or more. Do not hold sovereign bonds. Now that's different maybe than bills. That might be different than bills, but don't hold sovereign bonds. Many governments will default. Okay, here he gets to the core of it. Don't bet on inflation reducing your debt. High interest rates or indexation of loans might make it impossible to repay what you borrowed. Don't forget that stocks have, let me start again. Don't forget that stocks have been inflated by massive credit expansion. This will end. The list of don'ts in the biggest global debt and asset bubble in history is, of course, endless. So here are some do's, which should be more useful. Do hold a lot of physical gold and some physical silver in safe jurisdictions like Switzerland and possibly Singapore, outside banking systems. Precious metals must be held in safe, non-bank vaults in your name with direct access. To minimize confiscation or freezing of your metals, it is best to keep them outside your country of residence. Hold a meaningful amount of physical gold and silver. And look, it may be we run out of time to do that. Miners give you the leverage to that same upside. Most of our clients I don't know what HNW stands for. He must have changed the name of his organization. So, it's just Gold Switzerland. I don't know what HNW means. Most of our clients who are HNW wealth preservation investors have more than 20% of their investment assets in gold. And I'm suggesting to you, if you can't do it all in gold and silver, miners are another place. Start with the best names first. And so they have 20% of their investment in gold, 20% of their assets, and a smaller percentage in silver because of its volatility. Gold is up 9 to 10x this century. That's the one we're in most currencies. All right, I saw this headline, and this is why I printed it out. I hadn't read it, obviously, you're noticing, before I went to this video. But this headline I did. The real move in gold and silver hasn't started yet. The move away from the dollar as the global trading currency is likely to accelerate over the next few years. I apologize. It must be the pollen, I don't know what, or it's the heat. BRICS countries are, wherever possible, settling bilateral trading in their local currencies with gold as the ultimate settlement money. This will be a gradual move away from the dollar. At some point, the move will accelerate as the need for trading via another nation's currency will seem superfluous, especially since final settlement can be in gold. As I have made clear many times, the U.S. confiscation of Russian assets will lead to central banks no longer holding dollar reserves, but instead, gold will be the only acceptable reserve asset. I can't turn off the microphone. Excuse me. The move by central banks to gold as a reserve asset will lead to a fundamental revaluation of gold over the next few years to a price which will be multiples of the current price. The major increase in demand can only be satisfied by higher prices and not by more gold, since the world cannot produce more than the current 3,000 tons of gold per annum. In my 55-year working life, I have experienced two major bull markets in gold. The first one was from 1971 to 1980, with gold up 25 times from $35 to $850. That's the John Updike Rabbit is Rich trilogy. The second one started in 2001 at $250 and has only started a move which will reach multiples of the current price. But my 55 years of gold history is just over 1% of the long-term bull market in gold. Since the emergence of the fiat money system, the gold bull market is sadly more a reflection of government's mismanagement of the economy, leading to ever-growing deficits and debts. In such a system, the price of gold mainly reflects the chronic debasement of paper money. Governments and central banks are gold's best friend, so become your own central bank. Own gold. They have, without fail, always destroyed the value of fiat money by debasing the currency through deficit spending and debt creation. For example, in the Roman Empire, around 180 years to 280 years after the death, or annus domini, the denarius silver coin went from almost 100% silver content to 0%, replacing the silver with cheaper metals. This obviously leads to the question, why should anyone hold fiat or paper money? Well, in a sound economy with no deficits, virtually no inflation, and a balanced government budget, holding cash that yields an interest return is fine. But the world has not experienced such Shangri-La times since 1971, when Nixon closed the gold window. Still, even at 2,300 gold today, gold in relation to money supply is cheap as in 1970, when it was $35 an ounce, or in 2000, when the gold price was 300. All right, so now I have to go here to finish it. My printer did not print everything. So you're missing out on seeing a chart, which I will try to get for my lives. But basically it shows gold from going from $35 to $850, from 74 to 80. And then it collapsed and it went sideways basically until 2000. And it ran from 250 to 1900 in 2012, collapsed. And from 2016, it's gone from 1,050, and he says to what? He says gold will reach multiples of the current price. Since the emergence of the fiat system, the gold bull market is a reflection on government mismanagement. Okay. Then he has a chart which makes this statement. Gold is now at the same level as it was relative to U.S. money supply as it was in 1970 and in 2000. Gold is as cheap now as it was in 1970 and in 2000. This is a chart, gold price adjusted for United States money supply since 1934. I'll try to get that out. One last paragraph. With the falling of dominoes outlined above, most people in the world will experience a lot more hardship than the current situation. For anyone with savings, whether it's $100 or $100 million, wealth preservation should be a top priority. Gold and some silver in physical form, safely stored outside the banking system, should be an absolute priority. Yes, it should. As we encounter difficult times, helping family and friends is more important than anything else. This will be extremely important in order to deal with the trials which we will all encounter. Hey, puppy dog. We'll go out in the heat in a second. Just let me finish. And please don't forget that in addition to family and friends, some of the best things in life are free, such as nature, books, music, hobbies, and puppy dogs. So let me tell you a little bit about Egon Von Greyerz. He was born with dual Swiss and Swedish citizenship. His education was mainly in Sweden. But why? Egon von Greyerz began his professional life in Geneva as a banker and then spent 17 years as the finance director and executive vice chairman of Dixon's Group PLC. During that time, Dixon's expanded from a small photographic retailer, you wouldn't know them, to a FTSE 100 company and the largest consumer electronics retailer in the UK. If you're in London, you see them all over. During the 1990s, Egon became involved with financial investment activities, M&A, and asset allocation consultancy for family funds. This led to the creation of an asset management company based on wealth preservation principles. He calls his company Von Greyerz, his last name. It's now the world's leading company for direct investor ownership of physical gold and silver outside the banking systems. Our vaults include the biggest and safest gold vault in the world in the Swiss Alps. Clients include high net worth individuals, family offices, pension funds, investment funds, and trusts in over 90 countries. He talks all the time on the media, etc. Just to make it clear, I've never met the guy. I have no relationship. But if I had a lot of quid, he's for when you have a lot of money. His minimum is massive. But I just trust him after. I've been listening to him for probably 25 years, if that makes sense. Maybe it's less than that, but a long, long time I've been listening to him. So anyway, that's my 45-minute presentation on gold. I really encourage, the first thing would be to own the physical assets. If you can't do that, I recommend the Sprott physical asset trusts in gold, silver. He might have one in platinum. And then the mining shares, like the copper, Freeport, McMoran, gold. It's the best ones are the big ones, Newmont and Barrick. But then you've got if you want to diversify a little in silver, Wheaton Precious Metals. These have moved, but they haven't even begun their move. So these become core positions for a longer term hold. The little mining company I've told, and many of you have shown interest in, I think is great for massive upside. There's risk reward, but it's more, it's more at there's the investment grade, it's more at the speculative end. But these speculative companies will become big, a lot of them. So I'm going to leave it there. I wish you a pleasant evening. Survive the heat, and we'll talk to you live tomorrow. Peace.